You should all have an email in front of you that was from City Attorney Andy Delaney from a few weeks ago. It was initially going to be on the agenda, and then we pulled it because we didn't have a full commission here. So essentially, it's being brought back because there's just been some things that have just been kind of left hanging, and it's been requested that commissioner that we brought back to commissioners, and you all discuss how, if you would like to move forward.
Did you say there's pictures of this one?
Not inside, not in the back on that one, no.
It's 310 Highland.
Yeah.
I thought the houses looked better than ever, so I don't know why it's even on here.
I don't know that I've seen any changes to the house. I mean, some of the stuff around the property's been picked up, but that still doesn't address any of the things that have been noted.
And what are those?
I mean, Dave's up here if you wanted to, I mean, at the foundation, I don't know, Dave, did you want to give us an update on 310 Hiawatha?
It's been a extended period of time since I've physically been on the property or there are conditions with construction appear to be compromising the structure and making it an unsafe place to live. The foundation appears to be open in some areas, which allows infiltration of animals and infestation of insects. I've not been inside, so the much of the work was done without a building permit. It's sometimes obvious to tell if an inspection is done whether that work was done correctly. I know there was a handicap ramp that was built, which is maybe suitable for its use, but it probably has. It's never been inspected. There are things in the yard area that are compromising to adjacent property owners.
I think the yard's cleaned up.
It has from time to time being cleaned up, and then it gets back in a very favorable condition. But and I believe the additional accessory structure that's in the side yard has been removed, and I believe there's only structures there. And they have removed some structures that existed there before. But the yard conditions are not representative of some of the households in the city. Any other questions about that property?
And we also have shingles that have been sitting there for the last 2 years, maybe. I mean, so the roof hasn't been worked on. I thought there was issues with that.
There's
The back part, the porch, I believe, is falling off. If I remember, the siding isn't.
There's on the west side of the structure there. Sometimes people call that, I think John's Mansfield made the siding product, and sometimes it's referred to as having asbestos in it, but without physically checking it, you don't know. But there is a distinct line between some of the structure on the west side, and then the foundation is exposed on the north, where that extension building is added onto the structure. The roofing conditions are hit and miss. It appears to be somewhat involved with wind. It makes the roof not suitable for it makes it more favorable to conditions that might cause a leak delay. But whether it's leaking or not, I can't tell.
Smith, anybody else have questions for Dave?
Are those accessory buildings, is there one still too close to the property?
There had been,
They moved one of them.
I didn't drive by today, but the one that's on, there's a side yard. The accessory structure is to not be in the front yard or the side yard. And unless it's approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The original buildings that were there, they're no longer there, so it's not material. But one of the canvas covered structures, steel, I think they had a steel frame, was in the side yard. And I can't be sure without going by and looking again whether that's been removed. There was one similar to it in the rear yard, and that's okay. They're sometimes open, but so are garages. Any other questions?
Dave, do you have any recent pictures of, I mean, you're talking about the roof leaking possibly. I know that you've not been in, I don't know that you have the authority to gain access to the inside of the house. If the people are, I don't know what they do with the stuff that's outside. And I go by there on a daily basis and it's probably better now than it has been. Although who knows what it's going to be like tomorrow. I hear you saying all this, but I don't hear or see any proof of what you're saying. You see what I'm saying?
Well, the proof of the building permit, I can see that there has been some work done there on occasion, but there are no building permits, and we do require those.
So I'm hearing you say that they've not gotten any building permits for what they've done.
They got a building permit at one time, and the work was not done within the period of time that the permit existed. And then there was some things that were done to the structure that were not part of the building permit.
You need a building permit to work on your own house?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I had to have a permit put
I
up.
thought we've already been down this road and it was a no, but you did on rentals. We've already talked about this several times.
A building permit is required. There may be zero cost, and there may be functions that are done to the structure that cause no cost to be incurred. Generally, windows, doors, siding, that type of thing. Structural issues require a permit, and there is a cost assessed with it. Painting, that kind of thing doesn't require any cost. Painting does not require a permit. Roofing, siding, windows, doors does require a permit. That may not require a licensed contractor.
That's different than what we talked about before. I would like to
Well,
see that. I would like to see that in writing if I can sometime.
Sure, you're welcome to. I can show it to you.
But that still brings us back to this house, which my concern is that the structural stuff that you said is needed to be repaired hasn't been. I don't know why we've been working with the house for 2 years. If the commission feels like enough has been done because the yard's cleaned up and we just sit back and wait, then I guess that's what we do. But it just, we're gonna end up having no teeth to enforcing any codes, basically, is what I see. But like I said, I'm open to what others have to say.
I myself do not see anything wrong with the structure of the basement. I mean, there's, I would say, 50% of the houses in town have that same basement, same problem. Those limestone basements, they've been there for over 100 years, and there's nothing there that's too alarming to me. Like I said, you could look at every other house in town, and they probably have that same type of problem.
I'm not as concerned about the basement as I am about the mold that you can see from the outside on the wooden part of the structure of the house itself. How healthy of an environment it is for them. I fear the house literally falling in on them, including that roof.
There's some,
And I don't know how to judge that. I fear for their safety and their health. He's not well in the first place. I don't know, we've been going over this house for longer than 2 years, but
I'm just not interested in making residents homeless. There's nowhere for anybody to move either. There's waiting lines in all the apartments. I just posted a rental for my own, and I've got 30 people that are waiting in line to look at it tomorrow. So it's just not feasible to make people homeless, and I'm not going to do it. Where do you draw the line? And that's in my opinion, that's over the line.
Well, every time I drive by there, the yard appears to be a mess, and it's just awful to look at. There's nothing will live around it. It's improved in recent weeks. It is a lot better. It's a better.
They've been doing much better with that. They have moved the buildings back. They are still working on getting, they're wanting to get the structures, whatever they are. They're wanting to get those removed as well too. It's just keeping stuff thrown away, but they are working on it.
No, I agree that I don't like kicking people out of their house and there's no place to move. But somehow we gotta keep the pressure on them. Keep the place cleaned up and keep working on the improvements to the issues that Dave's pointed out that need to get addressed. How we do that.
that we've done that for years.
I know we have.
And I mean, I have 100% agree with Brian, and I 100% agree with Becky. It's that it's how can you 100% agree with both parties?
Well, I mean, the problem is that there are not resources out there for people in situations like this, where they're living in substandard conditions. There's just, we have a housing problem in our community, and nationwide there's a housing problem. There's not enough adequate safe housing for people. And we're trying to work on that, but what do you do in the interim? I apologize that we didn't have pictures or anything. This had come in front of the commission multiple times, and so I figured everyone was very familiar with the house and the issues with it. In 2022, the commission did vote to order the house demolished. There hasn't been any improvement, and that was based on unsafe and dangerous conditions of the house. There hasn't been any improvement to those unsafe and dangerous conditions that would have warranted that. Again, you're absolutely correct. There isn't, where do they go? And so I think that's the kind of issue that we're facing here. I will tell you, I looked up the value of the house itself on the county's website, and it's valued at $2,550, down from $3,300 for last year.
That's
So
the house value.
that's the house itself, yes. The property itself is 17 something because there's a decent amount of land. But I mean, it's a tough situation. But there's also the issue of what if the house falls down? What if
I just don't, it's 100% comparable. Even if they decided they wanted to sell it, that house can be fixed. It just needs siding and a roof.
$2,500.
Huh?
It's worth $2,500 according to the
It's
county.
not, I will give them $2,500. That is not right at all. Anybody will buy that, and it is repairable. It's just a matter of them getting the money and the time to do it. And not everybody, it's hard to even find anybody to even put a roof on a house right now. I mean, it's just not easy.
So my fear is that, and believe it or not, I'm not into kicking people out of their homes either, although some may think that, but I don't. My fear is that you're right, there are other houses out there that are just as bad, if not worse shape, and they may come back with the same thing. Well, you didn't tear down this house, and why are you going after ours? But especially some of our rental houses out there that aren't kept up. So I mean, we've got to start putting our foot down sometime. I just don't know how we're gonna do it. And it's frustrating.
Well, we need to stop tearing houses down.
For the most part, if they're repairable, I would argue that that one's repairable. It doesn't matter, your
I've
opinion, my
done
opinion.
several of them before, and I can tell you that is repairable. No.
Well, it is, but we don't have any control over, I mean, we can't do anything about ownership, and if the owners are incapable or unwilling to do anything about it, that house persists as a dilapidated building, and I'm not just talking specifically about that house, but all houses, and when you have houses that are able to continually sit like that, it brings down the values of your entire community. It brings down, I mean, you can, there is data that shows when you have a house, it begins to deteriorate. The houses around it begin to lose value and people stop taking care of their properties the way that they did. Because why am I going to take care of my property to this level if I'm living next to a property that looks like this? And it is just a continual decrease and decline in the quality and value of your housing.
Still doesn't justify making someone homeless.
I'm not
I
saying
mean,
that. I'm
if
saying
the
that there's
neighbors
a
don't like it
problem
that
that
much, then maybe they should hire someone to paint the house for them. I mean, you can help people out.
I mean, the
If
issue
the neighbors
isn't
don't
just that
like
it
it, you
needs to be
stop by and you
painted.
say, could I pay somebody to paint your house for you? I mean, there's people out there that would help people out. And maybe that's what we need to be doing, is asking the community to help these people out. But for us to just come in with a bulldozer and kick somebody out of their house, it's just wrong on every level. And it's honestly upsetting to me that we're even having this conversation again. That you guys can sit up here and feasibly say that you're gonna do that to somebody is wrong on every level.
And it wasn't
If it
that
was your
long,
house, how would you feel about it?
because my house wouldn't be in that condition. And not to mention, just a few months ago, you're like, Becky, whatever you think, I'm done. You know, they're not doing what they need to
Well,
do.
they cleaned it up and they fixed it.
I won't
They
say they
have cleaned
fixed
it,
it.
they've cleaned it up tremendously.
the yard.
And that was for the house on, that wasn't necessarily that one, that was Miami Street.
What I misunderstood. So I would say that obviously we're not gonna come to a decision now because there's quite a difference in opinion. But I agree with what Dave said, is we have to continue, not just this house, but others as well. If there's nothing that's being done, and we can get pictures again, we get updates if we need to, but if it's not getting repaired to where it needs to be, something's gonna happen.
Cleaning up the yard is one thing, but doing the structural work, which is what the agreement was, correct? That's another thing. I so appreciate that they cleaned up the yard. But they're not living up to their end of the bargain as far as the structural work. And they stood right there. Amanda stood right there and said that they would be able to do it.
Is there a
So
reason why they're not here today?
I have no idea.
I mean, do they know that we're talking about this right now?
I would assume.
Because they don't. And that's not right.
That's not fair.
So I know if someone was gonna talk about tearing my house down, I'd be here if I knew about it, and they don't know about it.
I agree with that.
say we're not gonna come to a decision tonight.
I mean, do you all want them to come to a meeting and
Absolutely.
discuss what their plans are, or like, how do you want to move forward? Or just meeting direction?
Yes.
Ultimately,
They should
we
be.
need to figure out what we want them to do, for sure. If it's, they want a roof on it, and then we'll be happy with that. Does it need a coat of paint? Does anybody even know what we want to do, what the list is that we want fixed to make it so that this goes away?
Well, I mean, the code is bring it to a standard where it's not unsafe and dangerous. Now, if we're just talking, they're going to repair it, and like, that's typically, they work with the code enforcement officer to understand what needs to be done in order to make it compliant.
We need to make sure that they know that.
So then, yes,
Because
that'd be great. Next-
I
next
think that
week.
they're more on the lines that we need to just have the yard cleaned up and then.
I might suggest if there's a motion to table this to a date certain, then we can make sure they know that they need to be discussing it some other time.
I make a motion that we table this conversation until the Davidsons are.
Let's set a date.
All right,
You want to do it in 2 weeks? You want to do it?
2 weeks. We need to do it and get it done. So that would be
25th.
the 25th of September.
I'll second it. Well, first of all, it's been moved. Horizon laws too. It's been moved and seconded to table this discussion until the 25th. So the Davidsons will have the opportunity to be here if they choose. Is there any further discussion? Not. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0. Moving on to new business, a public hearing and resolution number 15, exceeding the revenue neutral rate levy for the 2024 budget.
So back in 2021, the state legislature passed a law that if you're going to exceed what is the revenue neutral rate, which is the same number of dollars that you levied in the current year, then you have to send out, well, the county clerk is required to send out notices for every taxing unit that is planning to exceed the revenue neutral rate, which was done. And then you have to set, within those notices, set a date and time for a hearing to be heard. That was for tonight. And so this item specifically is to conduct that public hearing and then take a roll call vote on whether or not to exceed the revenue neutral rate. This does not set a specific rate. I will say that the rate that was sent out as the maximum not to exceed amount was the 53 mills, which was the 2020 budget mill levy. That's not the intent, obviously, and we'll get to that when we do the budget hearing the next item. But this one is required first, to hold the public hearing and then take a vote to exceed the revenue neutral.
Okay, so is this, at this point, we ask if anybody has any comments?
So we need to open the public
Oh.
hearing.
So this is why I want to talk to you first.
Yeah, we just have to open. the
I'd like to open the public hearing to discuss resolution number 15, exceeding revenue neutral rate levy for the 2024 budget. Are there any comments from the public? There you go.
I'm Stuart Aller, I'm a citizen of Hiawatha, Kansas, and I just have more questions than comments. I want to know why revenue neutral rate is proposed to be increased by so much, why we're exceeding. I just like to hear the reasons why from you all. I'd like to know what benefit as a citizen of Hiawatha, Kansas, that I will be receiving for that.
And so I'll clarify at the next item, which is the budget hearing, we also have to hold a public hearing. And so my intention was to go through the recommended budget at that time. And it's another hearing. And so hopefully we can answer those questions. And then if you have any additional ones, you're welcome to speak at the second hearing. If that sounds reasonable.
Right.
He's not there. Bill.
Okay, if we're gonna push it to the next hearing, then I like to propose that we don't exceed the revenue neutral rate. It hasn't been exceeded. We were told by the school board and the county, they're looking at it, so I would propose we don't do that.
We're in the first one now.
I just got. My name is Richard Sheldon, most people know me. Sad to say. But the way I understand the revenue neutral, all the research I've done, if the valuation goes up, the city or the county would receive more tax dollars anyway, if you keep it revenue neutral. Is that incorrect? The
It is
article I'm
correct.
reading is incorrect then.
The revenue neutral rate is taking in the exact same tax dollars as the previous years. So if your assessed valuation increases, then you lower your mill levy
Then you
in
lower
order
the mill
to take in
levy
the
to
exact
match
same
that.
number of dollars.
Okay,
Right.
so one of the articles I read was wrong.
Okay,
So that's why I was asking.
no, I appreciate
Everything
it.
you
'Cause it's
read is not always correct.
correct.
And then I also knew that the Horton was actually talking, I know quite a few people because the kids own businesses in both places. And we have businesses here that I know Horton's talking about dropping theirs. So it's something to look at because especially with businesses and stuff. I mean, we're already one of the higher sales tax. We're up in the category of being the higher sales tax in Kansas. Not way the highest, but we're in the, probably the top 20%. The highest. And being a small town, I mean, we gotta try to do something to attract people. Yes, some of the properties are deteriorated, but as we tear them down, we also lose some taxes. And I do know for a fact that, that's been quite a few years back, and I know I'm just bringing up another deal, but the little house that just sold over here at 500 North. Sold it, the Lemons owned it. And we actually, back quite a few years ago, was approached by a real estate agent who bought it on a combination deal and made an agreement with the city, and we turned that over. And I know that we bought it for $5,000 and it sold the other day for almost 300. So the
Buy some more
tax,
houses.
uh,
Buy more houses. Get
the
business.
problem is with inflation and everything, it's hard to, and people don't want to work.
Oh, amen. to
That's
that.
why I'm not doing much construction anymore.
No,
But it's sad
I
to say,
agree on that one.
I know I got off the deal about that revenue neutral. Thank you for answering that about that. because I did not know.
Well, and I appreciate you asking because it is very confusing and I will
Well,
tell
this is
you.
the first year that's actually came out and publicized like this.
And
We
that-
actually got these forms.
And it's supposed to be, it was supposed to happen last year as well. I think they went out last year.
Did they go out last year? I did not remember that looking like that, so I must not have been upset last year.
But yeah, this is a new state law that we're
Yeah, I
kind
knew
of
it
trying to get
was.
used to. Yeah,
And it is kind of confusing when you start looking through it for a homeowner or people.
right. Well, I mean, it's confusing for the average person and local government people, so.
Any further comments? And we would like to close the public hearing. And then I make a motion to adopt.
The resolution, if I roll, it'll be a roll. Motion.
We would like to make motion to adopt resolution number 15. So roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ember,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Shepherd.
Aye.
Commissioner Linden,
All right.
Motion passed 3-1. Moving on to number 3, the budget hearing and ordinance number 2122, appropriate funds for the 2024 budget. So is this another public hearing that I opened?
Well, first I'd like to go through my presentation if I can get connected. It just said that I was trying to, and then do you want to give her permission? And I didn't get permission, but I don't know who was supposed to grant that. Yeah, see, and I tried to connect and say I'm trying to, but it won't. I don't know how we. Thanks, Mikey. What will we do without our IT tech slash police chief?
Oh, that's. Me too.
All right, so we've gone through this budget process. We had our very first workshop July 24th. On July 20th, we submitted our R&R notice to the county clerk. Actually, we had one in June as well, or May as well. And then we submitted our R&R notice to the county clerk. And then we had 4 different options on that. What I had proposed was the current levy. We did not have the R&R on there as an option because the way that the state law works is if you are going to propose a budget that is the R&R levy, then there are dates of submitting your budget that make it impossible to do, basically. So it doesn't mean that we can't do the R&R. It just means that we had to say we weren't going to do the R&R in order to go through the process of notification to all the property owners and to have until October 1st to adopt our budget. And so we sent out those R&R notices with the 53.012 mils, which was the levy prior to decreasing the mill levy in 2021. The R&R levy is 36.475 mils, and that is the equivalent to our current levy of 41.013. So the increase in valuations led to an R&R levy that would be lower than what our current mill levy is. We had also discussed a current inflation levy, which would be through 2023, 42.459 mils. And so those are the 4 options that were presented. And then on August 14th and August 28th, we also had budget workshops on both of those days. And then came to a consensus with the commission to submit the inflation levy for the public notice that was published in the paper for our publication of our budget, which that hearing is also set for tonight. This is the second hearing that we'll have after I go through the budget. And we're required by state law to hold both of those hearings between August 20th and September 20th. Obviously, we're meeting that. And then, as I mentioned, submit the budget to the county clerk by October 1st. Okay. So tonight, as I mentioned, we have the R&R hearing. We did the resolution for exceeding R&R, and then we will have the hearing, and then so here is option 3, inflation mill levy, and this is the proposed mill levy for each fund. We levy property taxes for employee benefits fund, for Parks and Rec, for the library, and for the general fund. So the proposed levy for general fund is 13.7 mils, library fund 6.2 mils, Parks and Rec 11.559, and then employee benefits at 11. So this is incredibly difficult to read, and I apologize for that. This is kind of how we came to that inflation levy amount. So if you look at the 2014 budget and the dollars that were levied in 2014 to fund our city budget, and then look at the dollars that were levied in 2023 to fund our city budget, and then look at what has happened to inflation over that 10-year period, the difference in dollars levied is we are $185,000-ish below inflation in our 2023 budget. That comes to 14% under inflation. Now, if you look at other taxing districts, obviously we all have the same, pressures against us, right? Like we all have the same kind of bucket of goods that we're buying services from, and especially for cities, we have things that we're purchasing pipe, and of course, people. We know how much inflation there has been on just labor services because there is a lack of workforce, and all the related and compounding expenses related to labor are going up. And we are a service organization. A huge chunk of our budget is service because we provide the services that the private sector does not. The private sector does not provide because they're not profitable. And so it's a balance of, kind of unlimited needs almost and very finite resources. And so if you make some comparisons to other taxing districts, particularly the other two large taxing districts within the city of Hiawatha, USD 415. If you look at valuation over time and mill levy over time, which their mill levy has gone down, their 2024 proposal would put their mill levy since 2014 down 5.272 mills. Valuation has increased about 69 million. And so if you look at the comparison in revenue, what they had taken in from their property tax levy in 2014, it's about $4 million, just over $4 million. And what is proposed for 2024 is about $7 million. So that's a 69% increase over that 10-year period. And the city's property tax levy is 14% under what the inflation rate is. And then if you look at, so that's about 51% over inflation. If you look at Brown County, the valuation has increased about 100 million since 2014. And the revenue that they are proposing taking in with their newly published mill levy, it's around the increase is around $8 million. The increase since 2014 is about 3.2 million, which is 68% increase. And so, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about property taxes being high, sales tax being high in Brown County, all of these things. I think what I'm trying to point out here is, your property taxes, you have multiple entities you're paying property taxes to. And I don't think that it is unjustified that they've done what they, had to do with their budgets. We also have some other means of raising funds, and we have sales tax, and that's very helpful. County also has access to sales tax. We have franchise fees. And so we do have a more diverse revenue stream than these other entities. And so we haven't had to increase the way that they've had to increase. But we do need to maintain our property tax levies in order to support the library, for example, which is part of our levy. And so it's important that, I think it's important to point out that we are not excessively raising taxes and have not over time. To be under the rate of inflation, I think illustrates that. And what we're looking to do is just to make sure that we are providing the services that we want to provide. Or that we're expected to provide for our citizens. And I would say that there are a lot of things that we are not doing, or we've cut back on doing. We're not replacing equipment like we should be. We are not building out a capital improvement plan like we should be. And those are the things that you do when you have substantial pressure on property taxes. The needs don't go away. And so what goes away is the planning, is the investment. And those are the things that don't get done. And so I think it's important to address and review rates, annually and really assess what are the needs. And that's something that we didn't do with our utility funds either over time. And we see what happened, in the last year as a result of that. I mean, it leads to massive increases, just to maintain your systems. And so that is why we're proposing the rate that we are. And so I would like to, if you look at residential property taxes, so the revenue neutral rate of 36.475. So if you have $150,000 house, your property taxes this year would be about $629. Your city property taxes would be about $629. And then with the inflation rate levy, that would increase by about $103.22, which comes out to about $860 a month. That's the difference that we're talking about on a $150,000 house. $150,000 commercial property comes out to $224.40 at about $1870 on a monthly basis. And then total revenue that would be taken in, the anticipated projected revenue that will be taken in with this mill increase is $185,168.90. So if you look at comparison communities, this is a list of kind of what would be considered peer cities, and by peer cities I mean similar population, small communities, similar assessed valuation. And then looking at those levies, looking at sales tax rates. Obviously, I mean, cities have, we have three main ways to raise revenue. And one of those is not all of that effective because it's just not as much revenue, which would be franchise fees. But property tax and sales tax are your main revenue sources as a city. And so those are the things that we look at when we look at comparison cities. Also franchise fees, and the standard franchise fees is between 5 and 7% for electric and gas franchises. And so if you look at Hiawatha with the peer cities that are listed there, we see an average population of 3,700, average tangible valuation of 28 million. We're now at, was for the previous year's levy. So we were at 27 million at the time, then debt level, and then the average city levy. We are currently at 41.031 mils. The average for the peer cities is 54.575 mils. And I'm saying that's with an average valuation that is slightly higher than Hiawatha's. So they're taking in quite a bit more in property tax revenue than the city of Hiawatha is. And then if you look at even overall levies, which I think is important to address, because there is this perception that Brown County has high property taxes. Brown County does not have high property taxes when you compare to the rest of the state. The average for our kind of community, peer-sized community, is about 170 mils, and the Brown County as the whole within Hiawatha is 124.6, substantially lower than what the average is. Sales tax, the average sales tax of peer communities is 8.88%. We're at 9. So I understand that people feel like they get hard when they get the property tax bill and they have all these other bills, but we are not out of line with other places. In fact, we are lower than other places. And so I think that's important to point out. If you look at the debt burden for City of Hiawatha, it's high. It's comparatively high. The second highest out of the peer cities. Osawatomie is the only one that has a higher debt burden. I also know, though, that Osawatomie also has a lot of utility debt, which is where the majority of our debt comes from. It's utility debt. We have 46% of our debt burden is funded through utility rates. 1% is property tax funded, and then 53% is sales tax funded. And of course, 40% of that is streets related, and then 13% is economic development, which would be those IRBs that were issued for industrial park businesses. So 2024 budget, this shows kind of our budget summary, lists the proposed expenditures and revenues from each fund. One thing that is, I would like to clean up about the city of Hiawatha's funds is we have way too many of them. If you are also going to look and compare to other cities, they don't have this many funds. Our budget is overly complicated. And I think that is part of the reason that there's not good, clear communication with the public, because they look at our budget and it's what is going on here. You know, we've got just fund after fund after fund. So I'm working to improve that, and so that we can have clearer communication and more, I guess, transparent financials that we can present to the public and communicate in a clearer way, because I do understand how confusing it is when you've got, you know, just all of these funds and you don't know what the revenue sources are and you don't know what the money is being spent on. And that is something that can be simplified and that we need to simplify. So we're looking at total spending for 2024, $10,600,000. And of that, we've got about 1.2 million that is in capital funding. In previous years, we have not had an official 5-year capital improvement plan and equipment reserve plan, and that is part of, I think, why we kind of struggle to keep up with what our actual needs are and what our equipment replacement needs are and those sorts of things. And so we have put together a capital improvement and equipment replacement plan for the next 5 years. That will obviously be adjusted each year as we go through the budget process. So what does this budget look like? There are no significant operational changes, meaning we are not planning on taking on any new services. We are not planning, there's no, it's essentially the same kinds of services, the same kinds of things that we're going to be doing. Our biggest focus in the upcoming year is going to be improving efficiency and effectiveness and better carrying out whatever the priorities are of the commission. The first step in that being, let's figure out what the priorities of the commission are. So we would like to go through a strategic planning process in order to have very clear goals and objectives and priorities to base future budgets off of, and also what we do as a city going forward. So we do have some funds budgeted for planning and consulting services, those being a strategic plan, which I think is critical for our roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years. And then recodification. It's been years and years and years since we codified our city code, and so it's confusing and it's not clear, and I think it's difficult for citizens to even understand what our codes are. So that needs to be a priority. And then planning and zoning, we actually don't currently have a planning and zoning map that we feel comfortable handing out to citizens, because there's so many changes on it and notes of this ordinance changed this and this ordinance changed this, and it's like well past time to improve our planning and zoning regulations. So this is really a kind of restructuring and reorganization budget of let's figure out how to be more effective and efficient and kind of adopt some of the best practices that other communities have in place. The primary inflationary pressure on our budget is really with people, as I mentioned earlier, employee wages and then wage related expenses. I'll tell you, we have a salary plan that we adopt annually, the commission adopts annually, and there are steps in it. We are completely unable to hire anyone in the beginning steps of those plans. We have advertised for positions and they've sat open for months. The salaries that we have in place do not compete with anyone. Mickey, police chief, Mickey Gruber did a great job this past year, kind of doing some comparisons with other communities and how he is struggling to keep up with wages of other law enforcement departments in the area. And that's something that we want to do organization-wide for the upcoming year. And so we budgeted a 3% COLA. Past years, we've done 2% every year, which is probably part of why we are really lagging behind in our wages. Also, COVID didn't help. And then a 2% kind of adjustment pool, where we do have those positions where we're trying to hire and we're unable to fill it. That would provide some funding for those types of positions so that we don't have long-term vacancies in positions. And then over the next year, we would like to do an internal wage study. I don't want to hire someone to come in and do a wage study. I think that we can do it fairly well by just putting in the data or putting in the research to find that data and do it ourselves rather than spending, $40,000 on a wage study. And then another thing that we have not done previously that we really need to is implement a performance evaluation system, so that we can, we have another measure of, how we're doing, how individual employees are doing, they have goals that they're working towards. That's something that we don't currently have in place that I would like to get in place. As far as organizational structure changes, we have started on that a few months back, March maybe, put Brad Scott in as the public works director. So he is now over streets, lights, utilities, etc., park maintenance, or not maintenance, but maintenance in general, airport. And so with that, we've kind of, we're working towards cross-training employees so that, we have all of the public works staff available to carry out the duties of all of the duties and responsibilities of public works. And so I think that's going to, and we've already seen where it's really improved efficiency with us carrying out our services, just having that pool of people available and capable of, carrying out multiple different tasks. And so we're going to continue to build on that. With that, we'll need to review and revise job descriptions. We need to update our personnel policies. We have had periodic updates via ordinances that are passed, but we have not had a full review and update of our personnel policies. And I think it's time to address that. And then a big one is revising our city code and structure to remove commissioner department titles from commissioners. We have commissioners Commissioner of Street, Commissioner of Finance, but there's no level of involvement or expertise in those areas by any of those commissioners. It's a very archaic structure that cities had in the past when you didn't have professional management, and it's something that it's kind of high time to address. So we're looking at that as well. And then as far as the CIP, capital improvement plan and equipment replacement plan, as I mentioned, we've got about $1 million, just over $1 million budgeted for 2024. We also have 2023, kind of a revised budget because that wasn't something that was ever discussed in previous budgets. There would be like a budget just in general for like capital outlay or replacing certain things, but there was no like overarching kind of plan. And so it was like looking at it at the end of the year, if there was money left in a budget, well, then I guess you can buy that piece of equipment, or I guess we might do this, this capital improvement. But there was no, I guess, process of having commissioners kind of weigh competing priorities and discuss, what those priorities are. And so this budget kind of does some of that. So the 2023 CIP, these are items that were budgeted previously. And so we've got for 2023, we have patrol vehicles, which we purchase annually. Those ones have already been purchased. And then we have a new fire truck, brush truck for the fire department. That one is in at $168,333. Parks and Rec had a truck budgeted for $35,000 back in 2021, I believe. Was that right, Stacey? And we've attempted to purchase it and actually ordered it and gone out to bid, and it's just never been delivered or received. So we've kept that twice. So we've kept that in there. And then we've got $50,000 for Star Park. renovations, 23,000 for a new fence upgrade, and then some new picnic tables at the aquatic park. 48,000 for stormwater improvements on Chippewa Avenue. And then the SCADA system that we have talked about a couple times that came up for the wastewater treatment plant. And that is supposed to be happening sometime this week. So that's great news. And so that's the 2024. One of the things that I've kind of repeatedly said during our budget workshops is if we're looking at budgeting something in the CIP ERP for 2023, sans, you know, some major change in our financial outlook in the next month or whatever, like this is happening. These things are happening. They still go to the commission for approval. It's not like we're circumventing that process, but when we're budgeting, we are budgeting that money in the CIP, and that obviously impacts the mill levy as well. And so these ones are in there as planned, and that they are budgeted within those individual funds as transfers to our CIP, and that does impact, you know, the level of funding. And so 2024, same situation. So we have for 2024 budget, we've got under general government, we've got about $39,000. One is small expense, $4,000 for storage container for Christmas lights, because those are not well stored right now, and that would be a big improvement. 25,000 for the clock tower repair and preservation. That is something that we spent a decent amount of money getting an engineering study on, and there are some things that need to be done to repair and fix the clock tower. Just to note, the city owns the clock tower. The trust owns the building, which is one of the more bizarre setups I've ever seen, but we have to maintain our clock tower. There is a chance that there could be maybe some grant funding out there. There's a lot of you know, historic funding that can be available in that sort of situation. Sometimes it's the form of, you know, getting tax credits that we can then sell. So, I mean, this is if, you know, we're not able to find any kind of outside funding and that sort of thing. That's what we would have to spend to make that upgrade. $10,000 in computers and technology, and that's an annual thing for the city-wide. That's also not something that we've typically budgeted regularly, and so I'd like to get on a clear replacement schedule with our computers and other technology. The police department has $144,000 budgeted for 2024. And that's $26,000 for office remodel, flooring replacement, and then some electrical upgrades that need to be made. $26,000 for the parking lot and alleyway improvements. And then the encrypted radios that are required by the FCC. We're looking at $27,500 for those. Hopefully going to get some grant funding for those, but we obviously have to plan for worst case scenario, because we do have to do those. $6,000 for in-car cameras, $3,500 for radar guns, and then $55,000 for patrol vehicles. Fire department, in 2024, we've got $175,000 budgeted. We are needing to replace the building that is the former garage down the street. That was budgeted this year at $125,000 or $130,000. That is not going to replace that building. We've gotten estimates around $350,000 is a more accurate estimate for that. So I did not budget it at $350,000 because we simply cannot afford it. But I did put it in as budgeted with, hopefully we can get maybe a CDBG grant in order to, which is a 50-50 grant. We should be pretty competitive because it is a volunteer fire department and we're a small community. So I put it in at half of that amount, thinking we may have to fund half of that replacement. Parks and Rec, we've got $40,000 for pickleball courts, $50,000 for pruning field upgrades, $8,000 for a surveillance system for the Fisher Center and the aquatic park, and then $50,000 for gym floor renovations. And we did go through all of these during our budget workshop, and why these requests and what we're looking to do. We've also got 9,000 for the aquatic park, which is for a commercial vacuum and some new loungers. Streets department, we have 150,000 budgeted for next year, and that's for our annual $80,000 chip seal. And then we've got 40,000 budgeted for 1,100 Kansas Avenue improvements. And then 30,000 for our annual dump truck lease purchase. Stormwater, we're planning on doing a $50,000 improvement to South 3rd Street, and then 10,000 at 2nd and Oregon Street. And then water, we've got 105,000 for a vacuum excavator, and 8,000 for a line locator, and then 14,000 for an equipment trailer. And then wastewater, we've got 200,000 budgeted, 120 for a new sewer jet machine, 30,000 for replacement of variable frequency drives at North Headworks, and then 50,000 for UV light upgrades. And so that is our CIP in
I
here.
didn't see a camera in there.
Camera. Board.
Camera was, camera, I mean, pushed back to 2025 because
Oh, okay.
just the amount of money that we were asking for last year, so we thought, I just thought to push it
Okay.
to 2025, but it's in the plan, but I'd like to leave that back one more year.
Okay. I trust you.
And so finally, partnership requests that are funded in this budget. We have 209,000 for the library, which is the 6.2 mils. They asked for 209. We actually have, I think, 213 is what that mill levy will levy, but that is because we are not getting what we're levying in our property taxes. Our delinquency rate has been higher than what is in the budget and what we're given from the county. And so this will hopefully be able to generate the revenue that they're requesting. We have $25,000 for Hiawatha Foundation for Economic Development. We have just over $38,000 for the ambulance service, which we are going to go into a little bit more discussion in a little bit later on in this agenda. And then $15,000 for the fireworks, which is typical annually what we do. And then $15,000 for the chamber, plus transient gas tax is remitted back to them. And none of these are really changes. There's a slight increase to the library. And then we've also increased funding to HAFID because this is what we used to fund them at. This is what the county has historically funded them at. Although there's been a change there. And that's what they requested for this year. And so that kind of concludes my budget presentation. Most of it is just what we've done previous years and then kind of accounting for, as I mentioned, the increases in expenses for wages. We had a decent increase in our capers rate, as the general information for the public. One of the things that we do struggle with in attracting employees, particularly those entry-level employees, is that they have to participate in capers, whether or not they care about their retirement or not. And, a lot of people don't stay at the same place for extended periods of time. I think the average length of time at a job is about 5 years. And so when we have some of those entry-level positions, the wages are already low. And by the way, you've got to put 6% of your wages back for retirement. And then the city actually has to pay, this year we're paying about 9%. Next year it's about 10.5% is what we contribute of their salary. And so that's difficult as well. And that continues to increase. And then our workers' compensation rates continue to increase. We are going out to bid for work comp this year. So hopefully, I think we have like a $20-something thousand increase last year, which was like astronomical. So we're definitely going out to bid, but I don't know what other carriers there are out there for public entities like the city. So we do have different job categories, obviously, than a lot of other organizations and a lot of high-risk positions when it comes to work comp. And then our unemployment rate went up a bit. And so we had several things that kind of came in over. And then of course, everyone knows the effects of health insurance. Thankfully we were able to get a good bid back on our current health insurance provider for this year, but we do want to look at maybe changing the structure of our health insurance and looking at other more effective ways. So that is pretty much what I got. See, you have any questions for commissioners? And then we'll conduct the public hearing.
I would like to know if he got his answer.
We'll do that, and, right, I mean, we all over the public hearing and,
Oh, good idea.
but first is our. Any comments yet from commissioners? Any comments? Or anything from commissioners yet?
I see a lot of Parks and Rec upgrades, and we passed a tax for that already. I almost feel like we're double dipping. We grabbed passed a sales tax for that, and now we're looking at increasing our mills for lots of Parks and Recs upgrades. It's just a little.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, a lot of the sales tax is keeping the rec department going. I mean, just some of the basic expenses that we have every year. The improvements are just exactly that. We want to continue to offer more because I tell you, the Parks and Rec department is in some ways the face of the city. I mean, if I'm gonna get on Facebook, which I'm about ready to ban, but if I get on Facebook, most of the stuff you're gonna see is all the activities that occur put on by rec. I was in Casey's this weekend. On Saturday, I had to leave because the line was so long because people were coming into town for the football. So the way I see it, and it's just my opinion, everybody else has opinion as well, to upgrade for pickleball courts or for Star Park, which if anybody looks at expenses for playground equipment, it is absolutely outrageous, especially if we're going to do some inclusive playground equipment, which I would hope to see. I mean, that's just flat gonna cost money. So it's.
So that's fine, besides the fact that we marketed that tax to lower the mills on people's property tax. And so as a commission, you're taking away the reason that tax passed.
That was 2019. I mean, we can't ever say that there's never going to be any changes in the tax rates. I mean, our crystal ball did not predict a pandemic, which is just throwing everything into a mess. So, like I said, I mean, we all have our rights to our opinion. That's just the way I see it. So, anything else yet?
Well, I think our Park and Rec department provides services that you can't put a dollar figure to. Spend X amount of dollars, you're not gonna get X amount of dollars back because you can't put a value on what they provide for the city. We've got all our youth involved with all these activities. We've got people coming to town spending money. So we gain from their sales taxes and stuff. It helps the community bond together. You just can't put a dollar figure on that. So I'm not in favor of cutting it because I think it offers a valuable service that the city needs.
Just, you have to be careful when you market a tax and now we're taking it right back away. That's the part that doesn't sit well with me. There's several articles all over that you can still read. You two were both on the commission and you guys approved that and you should be fully aware of how that was marketed. So I'm not saying Parks and Rec isn't, it's not worth it. That's a whole different topic, but the city marketed that in that way. And so we're legitimately taking that right back. So you have to be careful with that.
Can I say something? After that rec tax was passed, the following budget year, the mills were cut and my budget was cut. And none of the projects that I had hoped for we're not, we're cut. So to say that that rec tax has been, put to use, if this 2024 budget is approved, I feel like this will be the first time that that rec tax will be in play.
Wasn't that when the post lantern tax went off too?
Yes.
So it wasn't, I mean, we just flipped it.
But it was in the paper saying that we're going to lower your mills by 6 mills, I believe.
And we did.
And now we're taking it right back 2 years later, basically.
Well, I mean, we're not going back to the mill levy that it was before. I mean, that was 50.
It's still
mils.
6
We're
mils.
proposing 42
It's still 6 mills though.
because it's gone down significantly over that time. I mean,
But it's still evaluations.
we've gone down 12 mils over that time.
It's just. It doesn't sit very well with me, is all I'm saying. And it shouldn't sit very well with the whole public when the city marketed that way. I mean, if the city didn't market it as a swap, it's a total different conversation. It's in the paper. I can send you all the links. I've read them.
There was a lot of stuff that was put on Facebook that was supposed to have been in the paper that was not true also.
I'm talking about Facebook. I'm talking about newspaper or.
I'm talking about newspaper articles also, and I don't want to get into it with you about Facebook and newspaper articles. But something, and I would be happy to see your articles.
Yeah, I can, simple Google. I actually sent them to her because she was not aware that that's the way the city marketed this.
And
Well,
once again, I'm sorry, Tony. Go
No.
ahead.
it was marketed that way, I do agree. But I do know that post lantern tax went off at that time too. That was in the paper also. It was tit for tat at that time when post lantern went off.
And like I said, I agree, 2019, absolutely, but we're 4 years down the road. I mean, to say that we can stand, I mean, if however you believe it's marketed or how the articles presented, I'm not gonna argue either, but life has changed. And when we go through COVID and come back and the expenses and the inflation and cost to even maintain what we're doing now, I just don't think it's fair to say that we are going back on what we said we would do. There's a lot that happens in 4 years.
And if we also want to look at it, I believe that we're better than raising taxes all at once of 20%. That's basically what we're looking at doing, and that should never happen. It's totally unreasonable, and 3 to 6 is a lot even, and we're looking at doing 20. I mean, you can't have it all the time. This can be done a little bit every year. We were revenue neutral last year, and I think that we probably could have bumped it up a little bit, but just taking it all in 1 year is unreasonable, and we're not doing our jobs.
I view it a different way. I'm looking at that we're going from 41 to 42.4, whatever it is. I
Which
mean,
is 20%,
It's 16.4%.
pretty close to 20.
And I'm also one of those people that just wants to look at what's coming out of my pocketbook. And I don't have $150,000 house. And so when I'm gonna be paying less than $100 over a year, so I can make sure that my kids, well, I guess not my kids now because they're older, but so there's activities and there's things for people to do. So we can have a fire truck that provides services that I hope we never have to use. So we can have the patrol cars, and not to mention the stuff that's not exciting, the water and the sewer and all that, which we don't start having that and keeping those upgrades, then who's gonna wanna move here? And if we lose people with this valuation, and then we are stuck, and the next mill levy we have to raise is not gonna be pretty. And I've had that experience in my current job, where if I would have made smarter choices 10 years ago, I wouldn't be where I'm at now, trying to fight to get wages up. And included in that is that you've got department heads who are very involved in this budget. This is money coming out of their pockets too. So they're not gonna ask for frivolous stuff that they don't, yeah, Patrick's going, yeah, sure, it'd be nice to have a shiny new truck. He's not gonna be doing that because he has to pay for it too. So when I look at, out of my pocket is $100 for a month for a house, I mean, less than that, because I don't have $150,000 house. I don't think that is too much to ask, and for us to back down to even just a little bit over revenue, we're just gonna keep digging us in a hole that we'll never get out of.
I agree with you, although there are those people that don't have extra $100 a year.
And
But-
we've
and they're not
already
gonna-
doubled
they're not
people's
gonna-
water bill and everything else.
Yeah.
It just never ends.
But they're not gonna be owning most likely $150,000 house either. Because I agree with you too, Tony, I mean, I absolutely agree, but we've gotta keep our city moving forward. And if we sit still, then we're actually moving backwards.
My fear is that the landlords are the ones that are gonna raise the rent on the people my age that don't own their house.
And that's on them. I mean, that's a sad. Well, it is, Brian, when you talk about people should be stepping up and helping. And then then you're gonna have a landlord who has a house that's valued at $75,000 and they're gonna jack the rent up. That's just.
Yeah, it's the bottom line. That's what you
That's
do.
what they'll do.
That's
That's
them
what
looking for an
It's
opportunity.
not the right thing to do,
Right.
because I can't help it that you own 7 houses,
Right.
but you're gonna jack somebody's rent up. I mean,
And rent's
That's a-
already
that's
sky
a-
high right now.
that's a slum landlord, I
Well, I
think,
was gonna
because
say, that's.
you're
that's-
making money off of it, but
that's on them.
anyway, that's a different subject. I actually, I'm tired of hearing about the COVID situation. On a personal level, what bothers me is when I look up there and see, and I said this at one of the workshops, why do we have to give the chamber $15,000? That's what they're asking for. Well, sure, we'll give it to you. To me, that's BS. We don't have $15,000 to give them. We have 10,000. How about we just give you 10,000 this year? If we can do more next year, we will. So-and-so comes to us. We need $10,000. We're asking, could you please give us 10,000? No, but I tell you what, we'll give you 750. 7,500. Oh, that'd be great, thank you. That's how we do better as a city. That puts money in our reserve, in our general fund, whatever. We do not have a tree back there, people. It's growing money instead of leaves. Cut that, cut stuff like that, cut the ambulance. We don't, and you're gonna talk about that later. I don't know what it is, but you'll talk about that later. Do what you would at home. Our fire department needs money, our police need money, the city needs money, so that we can support our own and its residents. And that's all I have to say about that.
Any other comments? Dave? Okay, so now I just open up. Okay, to now open public hearing for the budget hearing for ordinance number 2122. So now, Stuart, so when did you saw questions or did you get an answer?
I'm not sure I understood the mill levy.
Come on up if you'd like.
Proposing 53, what do we settle on?
42, it was the inflation rate, I can go back.
So then that will bring down the proposed rate increase,
Yes,
because I was standing at 45% increase.
yeah, no, that was, if we were to go back to the mill levy that was in place prior to this Parks and Rec sales tax being implemented, we went back to that mill levy and took the additional assessed valuation that came up every year. And that's not what commissioners settled on. They settled on the inflation rate mill levy, which was 1.4 mils above the current
So, and Stuart, the only reason we did that is because we had to get something turned in to the county that said that we're going to look at going above revenue neutral. You could always go less, but you couldn't go more.
We will not exceed that.
So we just, you put that there so you had plenty of wiggle room to find out what was gonna fit best. And yeah, it did not look great when they came out. You're like 53 and you just thought we were really grabbing for money, but that wasn't it. It was just to give us some space to move and negotiate, and figure out where we need to be with our budget.
Appreciate that. These letters started coming out and I saw that jump. I'm providing for my family of 5, soon to be 6.
Wow.
So this is important to families that live in this city. And appreciate your comment about cuts. I haven't heard anything about cuts for increases. Yes, we're in an inflationary period. Cities that provide services have to figure out what the needs are versus the wants. Because there's people like us that have to tighten our belts, and the city should too. It's the considerations of that. Now,
Thank you.
COVID, I know we don't like to hear about it, but services were canceled for a whole year.
Mhm.
Where's the refund for that?
Mhm.
We pay taxes for that. So these considerations,
Where did that tax money go?
yeah, and was the city giving COVID money? Was the city giving COVID money?
Yes.
Okay. Are these numbers based off that increase in money that was received from the government? Are we basing our new bar rate or our bar on that?
No, that was just property tax levy. Like if you look at what the property tax levy was in 2014 versus now, and then you account for inflation, that's the difference in actual revenue being taken in by the city with the proposed levy.
I'm not sure what you mean by services were canceled. I mean, we city kept things going.
My daughter didn't get to swim all summer now. She didn't get to use the park.
Mhm.
The library was closed.
Mhm.
Yeah, so where's the refund? That's a bother. And I'm seeing these high increases. That's why I'm here and performing my civic duty. I wish I could see more Hiawatha's out here. I don't know how many of you understand all this. You understand why your taxes are increasing? For the most part, I don't know if I do. So 16% is a lot. I have to manage that for my home household. And I appreciate the comment about the cuts. I think that's needs to be looked at because all I've heard is increases. And that's important for young families.
I have to cut back on my budget.
Mhm.
So do you, so does he.
Yeah.
Well,
And I would say that goes back to the previous issues of the city did cut and cut. And it wasn't like those expenses went away. It was the city wasn't doing things that it needed to do to provide the services that it needs to provide. And, that's what happens. You get, and it's typical with cities in particular, but you get new commissioners in that are anti-tax and those expenses aren't going away. You're just delaying.
A $40,000 pickleball court is not an expense.
It goes back to needs and wants.
Yeah, and there's a difference in opinion among commissioners on what is the need and want.
So are the commissioners the ones that go to this budget workshop and work out the budget together?
Yes,
we don't need.
and department heads.
Thank you for that clarification. I just see this increase on my letter. I'm here. I wanted some answers, I have questions still.
Do you know what the valuation of your house is?
Yeah, that's another thing. The county raises that every couple of years. I've had it increase 40,000, 60,000 sometimes. I've been to 2 appraisal meetings. I've won both cases in the last 7 years. And again, it's gone up another 30,000. So that increases my tax burden. So the state needs to get their act together because they've increased valuations during COVID time. And that's coming back to us. So then we're here to talk with you. City provides services. You go to a mechanic, they provide services. You expect an outline of your bill, right? And if they throw on an alternator, you can have some questions. So that's why I'm here.
We're glad you came and ask questions.
Thank you.
Come back.
Appreciate it.
I think it's also important, what it's gonna do to commercial property rates is gonna impact a lot more than your residential's. So every business owner is gonna see it more than anybody else.
Well, yeah, because it's taxed at 25%, so, and that's a huge struggle, and it's an issue with, that's against the Constitution. Beat that.
There's quite a few things I'll probably forget some of them. One, we belong to an organization that goes around and sees quite a few towns. Effingham, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but a lot of the businesses and stuff got together, they built the ballpark. I know years ago, when we were bigger in construction, I know we donated a lot to the Star Park out here. Has anybody talked about approaching some businesses to see if people will get together? I mean, instead of taxing people to attract people, I mean, these are things that people need. Businesses know this. Businesses are willing to step up, probably.
You know, Richard, what I think about that is having just had 3 kids graduate from Hiawatha, so of course being very involved is businesses get hit up all the time. And at some point, the businesses just have to step back. And so, and we have an incredibly generous business community. I mean, go to any of the ball games and see all the banners that are up there. You know, there's some really good things happening there, but it's hard when you're talking to, you know, the expense of, I'm gonna go back to playground equipment for Star Park. It's just, so I wouldn't say that we haven't thought about it, but that's just.
And it is bad, but, you know, the inflation and everything is hitting everybody, businesses along with everybody else. As far as landlords raising the rent, you know, on top of taxes, you got repairs, because sometimes they aren't the greatest tenants. You got insurance has took a huge hike. I mean, our insurance across the board went up 30–40%. There's our companies that are quitting rentals because of things that are going on in rentals, because of drugs, some of the other things. So rental, you know, I mean, you got insurance companies just quit, so you got competition that's getting out of it. So as competition goes out, the price goes up. So that's another thing about the landlords. I mean, some of them are not fixing up the property. I don't disagree with that. And it's been a downward spiral in that we haven't kept stuff up. Some of the things, I'm only familiar, so I'm not hitting on one category, but I did construction most of my life. So I'm just gonna ask, I don't know who the head of the department is, but I have watched when they remove a house. Do you guys make them keep track of their time?
Your time.
Yeah, for the people actually working, how many people are showing up? Because I know we have a lot of contracts. I'm not one that's into the demolition of houses. I know Sam Soden, which is now Chad. You've got Allers, you got Knudsen. If you watch them, they remove a house in about a day, bring dirt in the next day. When I watch a city, it takes them about a week and a half. You know, they could be doing something else besides that and be subbing that specified area out to somebody. Insurance, because tearing those things down, I know we're in excavators, digging and stuff, that insurance is high. When you start going down the ground, you start tearing stuff down, your insurance premiums go up. Just some things that you might think about trying to cut some. You know, and I'm not picking on that, because if you still want to tear a house down, no problem. But take bids out, keep track of the time. I mean, I run 2 or 3 businesses, so I got to see what is we can do in-house that's reasonable, or we have to sub something out. I mean, we don't surface manifolds and stuff. We take them to the whole city. Could I buy a piece of equipment, hire somebody? Yes, we don't do enough of it. You know, I'm just throwing out some ideas, thinking outside the box that you might think of. But I hold my employees accountable for the things they do. And I'm not saying that they are, but I'm just saying from point of view, from me watching outside, that I do some of this kind of work. It seems like it takes us a long time, because they aren't doing it all the time. I mean, Sam Soden did it for 60 years. I mean, of course, he's now retired kind of, but he taught Chad. Chad's been doing it since he was about yay high. They're good at it. And so we need to think about that kind of stuff in the commission, how we can try to cut, because we can help with the insurance costs cut. And we could have those employees doing something else that they're good at. These are some things I thought I'd bring up. And I appreciate your comments. So about, yeah, we are gonna have to tighten the budget. Yes, the kids are important. But we all gotta work together as a community and try and get this thing under control. And it is bad that we have let stuff go bad. You know, the infrastructure, some of the stuff around our town is needing work that we should have been doing 50, 60 years ago, when it was a lot more reasonable. But now we got a hurdle we got to cross. So thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you, Richard. Is there any more comments? I would close the public hearing for the budget. So at this point, I still would like to make a motion to adopt the 2024 budget and ordinance number 2122, appropriating funds for the 2024 budget as presented.
I'll say it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Is there some stuff that we could consider cutting? Like some of the donations?
That is obviously in the commission's purview, if they want to do that, and that would impact the mill levy. I think those that were listed on there were, and like you said, you know, they come and they ask for this, and instead we give them this. Well, the library and HEFA are the only ones that have actually asked for funds. The rest is, well, we have an agreement for ambulance service that was signed last year, which will provide those funds. But it's just what the commission has always done. I mean, even the fireworks, it's like, you know, in other communities, you see, the city isn't typically paying for your fireworks show. You know, I know, you know, sometimes it's a local business and there's fundraising done and stuff like that, but the city has always paid for the fireworks show. So
I understand that. What about?
No, I'll just say that I think I do see that with COVID, we do have, everything's more expensive. We do have to come up, but going anything above what the mills were last year is just, that's just an overreach. It's actually being greedy. I think that leaving it, take the evaluation and the evaluation raise and leaving the mills at what they were last year is a reasonable, it's still too much, but it's reasonable. And I think everybody will kind of see that we do have to do something, but I think that going above that is, it's just too much for 1 year. The extra one, so extra 1.3 mils basically. I mean, that's taking the evaluation is still a huge jump, but anything above that is inconsiderate to the public, in my opinion.
What I like about it is that it leaves us debt-free and it gets the departments what they need. It takes care of the employees, it takes care of it's just, it's a hard decision to make.
Well, we would still basically be looking at raising the taxes, what, 12%? Is that, do you have a figure for that? It's probably more than
And it's
that,
not to exceed.
12, yeah, 12 and a half.
12 and a half. So we're still looking at a 12% hike. I mean, that's still a huge hike. So to go for 16 is, it's just too much. It's just a grab. So leaving it the same. Go ahead.
As a citizen of Hiawatha, I have one question. What is the, where's the money lot difference between the property values, the mill levies bring in, and the sales tax that the city receives? Is there a breakdown of what brings in what? I'm just curious.
Good question.
Are you talking total sales tax?
Nope, I'm not talking about total sales tax. Is there two different pots? Mill levy, property tax valuation, your tax on pot here, sales tax pot here. Is there two different pots?
Well, there are, but they're used for different things too. So we have a local sales tax levy, consists of a 0.5 cent for special streets.
And that has its own pot, right?
That's its own pot, yep. And then we
You
have.
see where I'm going with this? I'm
It's-
kind of backing up Stacy's point, as she said earlier, that there was a sales tax that was levied for Parks and Rec, but did Stacy get to use that money for Parks and Rec?
It
No
went
fault to yours
replace-
or any of the commission sitting up there. Was that money appropriated to the correct department?
So what happened was the city lowered the mill levy 6 mils when the Parks and Rec sales tax passed. And so then that sales tax money was used for Parks and Rec operations, which was previously funded by that property tax. So there was no increase in revenue received in order to fund Parks and Rec. It
Okay.
was operations were funded through sales tax instead of property tax for Parks and Rec.
What is the forecast that the city plans to receive in sales tax in 2024?
So we have, so we've got the 1/4 cent for Parks and Rec. We have a 1/4 cent for economic development, which is the 2 IRBs, Crosswinds and Hemisphere. And then we have 0.5 cent for streets and 0.5 cent, well, 0.5 cent for streets capital project, and then another 0.5 cent that appears to be general, but has always been used for streets. So there's some.
We went through that. Okay, so that some of that we went through in the budget process.
Yes, we went through all of those.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as what, so a 1/4 cent brings in about $200,000.
Okay.
So,
I just was wanting to make sure that we're clear that also the budget is coming off of the sales tax that the city's going to generate as well.
correct.
Hopefully. Not that softens the burden of anything or anybody's decision, because I just get to sit back here and put money on quarterback, so.
I also looked at, in our budget, we're talking about wanting to look at performance evaluations and increasing wages and such. Because we need to retain good people. If we don't, and I still don't see this as making a huge jump. And so we need to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room so we can try and do some of those things. Because if we don't have good people in the city, then it's just not a good thing.
Well, and you said, Becky, that the average is 5 years for an employee, whereas we have employees that have been here 30, 40 years, or 10 years, 20. How long you been here, Brad?
18.
18. And, that's, we want to keep these good people.
And I think, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you again.
I was done, actually,
Okay.
but thank you.
Okay. One of the ways we keep good people too is if we still allow them to continue to get the work done that needs to be done. There's nothing more frustrating than when you need something to improve whatever department you're in and you can't, because we're trying to shoestring our way through it, we gotta stop doing that. We gotta start thinking a little bigger than just trying to just get through. And yeah, it's hard. There's no question about that. It's not something that I look forward to doing, but when I look at it, just an increase of 1.4 mils to be able to get some of the things that was listed on that, I think it's not
It's
reasonable
increase 6
from what we were last year.
over revenue neutral. So it's an increase of 6 mils. not
And once again, it's how we choose to look at it.
one.
I choose to look at what more is coming out of my pocket than what was before. You're choosing to look at what we could be doing, which would be a disaster if we went back to, sure, let's do revenue neutral, and then we will lose people, because why are you gonna stay around when you can't have the equipment replaced that you need, or the stuff you need for the police, you're not gonna stick around. So that's the difference between you and I, Brian, is you're looking at what it could be if we went way back. I'm looking at where were we last year? What little step can we move forward this year? To me, 1.4 is a little step. Sure.
And again, I'm just picking on things I have to know about. So I don't, and I'm not picking on Brandon here, but I'm gonna ask Brandon. On your sewer camera, I can't remember what you said was budgeted for the sewer camera.
That's for next.
So-
I know we can back off for 2025, but I just
Sewer
want,
jet, maybe, is that what you're thinking? Sewer jet, is that? what you're
no, the
thinking?
jet, I know you had this year, you backed the camera off to 2025, is that
Yeah.
right? And the only reason I'm gonna ask this is, I know quite a few people specialize in that, and I don't know how much you guys use it, but it's a high maintenance item.
The one that we have budgeted for, some of the higher maintenance ones that we know of, or some of the crawlers that I think that we're both aware of, things like that. There's a whole gamut of sewer jet cameras, as you know.
And I know Brad very, very well. I mean, he's done his homework. I know that. But I'm just bringing up something to think about, if we could get by for, in the budget, get by for a couple of years, I don't know how much you would use one, but let's say the camera part you would use so many times a month. So you gotta adjust and say, would that be more feasible to rent somebody or hire somebody for a year? So we can help get our budget, so we can get it, and just taking, hate to say it, in baby steps, yes. I don't know if you can stay where you're at. I don't know if we can actually hit where Brian would like, but maybe there's a middle ground in there that we could get to by looking at some options.
Well, we have rented them and they're pretty expensive.
I do know,
Do you mind if I approach it?
I don't care, come on up, because like, I don't know, that they changed a lot of this technology, but I've been around where they do a lot of this stuff.
Kind of explain some of the ideas of why we're looking at buying a sewer camera, just trying to help you answer some of these questions that you have, and they're good questions.
It's so you can
And so-
budget for your previous.
And so what we have going on in the city is we have a lot of, as everybody can see, we have a lot of utility debt.
Yes.
And so a large portion of our utility debt is geared towards inflow and infiltration into our sewer system, which is what we have a project going on currently that hasn't been started yet, but will be starting within the next, hopefully, month. We're gonna build a lagoon on our old north headworks out there, and that's just to deal with that inflow and infiltration, which just, if, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's stormwater getting into our sewer system. And so that stormwater getting into our sewer system causes us a lot of problems. We have to treat it. It causes problems with our samples that we send every month. And so, well, part of the reason we want to get sewer cam, and we're looking at more like a push cam type thing. And so we're not gonna, so what we're looking at would be the $100,000 crawler system that we can't see. But we want something that can identify spots where we can say, okay, well, we know that we're getting infiltration. And so, and part of that goes back to what we need to be doing as a city and what our plan is going forward. And so we need to be identifying the spots that we can say, okay, well, we think we have a problem here. We can push a camera up there and we can start spot fixing. Because what we think that we have is we think that we have some direct storm connections to our sewer and things like that. It also would give us an opportunity to use this camera if we have a sewer problem, instead of assuming that it's a customer's problem, we can actually identify that problem and make sure that it's not a city problem. You know, because we have a lot of old clay tile pipe, as you know, we know exactly what we have, so. And that could present a lot of different problems, as you know. So, this is kind of the reasoning why, kind of my reasoning. I know Dave Grimm was working on this before he retired. Dominic Greer is still, you know, involved in this process as well. And so this is where our line of thinking is coming from. Now, your ideas are certainly something that we can look at, because like I said, although we have it budgeted in 2025, it doesn't mean that it can't change.
And I will say this, I picked on Brad because I gotta do some of that work, and I knew you've done your homework, like I said, I know you well.
Yeah,
You do, but I'm just trying, that's the only area I knew how to talk about. And he is very, very honest about that, because the federal government comes down with regulations that they have to live by.
yeah.
And so I will commend him on that. I've always liked Brad, he does a good, wonderful job.
Well, I appreciate that.
So-
I appreciate your comments as well. I mean, it's important, these are important
I
things to
had to
talk
pick on somebody, that's what I do.
about. That's okay. I was.
I had to pick on the crappy side of life.
Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've been doing any proactive inspections on sewer lines either, have we?
We have not, no.
If we had a camera, if we had some spare time or a week or something, go out and make some proactive inspections to see where we're at with some of our lines and correct problem before they present a disaster.
Yeah, so which is also part of the plan as well. We actually want to get on a system where we're cameraing a certain percentage of our system every year, so we can identify problems before they happen.
And I'm not against Kathy cameras, I just, we put off a year or two so we can ease the pain of the burden of people.
Yeah,
Because I do believe we probably need one, and I think he'll do his homework on making sure we do the proper one. I've been stuck with buying stuff that wasn't real good.
yeah. No, like I said, that is something that we will for sure look at when the time comes. We're thinking 2025 for the camera right now, but well, of course, we'll be looking at that as well.
I suppose the last thing I'm gonna say is that we went through three budget workshops, I believe it is, with commission and department heads. And I mean, like I said, we spent many evenings eating pizza and going over this budget, and that's after we were done. Whatever week ago it was, that's what everybody felt comfortable with. And so I always set up here, we have great department heads, I trust them until they tell me differently. And this is what we hired our city administrator for. And if I've got department heads and city administrator saying this is the most workable budget, then I see no reason why I should stop supporting that now. So that's the last thing I'm gonna say about that. Does anybody else have any other comments? So I believe there is a motion on the floor.
Good second,
So, Dawn?
Andy,
Or,
Did we close?
yes, we did.
closed the
Okay,
public
sorry,
hearing.
we did. And then I messed up. I said, see, Richard, you got me in trouble. I let you come up here and sorry. So, and I made the motion, Andy seconded. Do we need to, does this need to be a roll call vote? Or
No.
just, okay, this is, okay, I don't know anything. I just sit up here.
I'd just like to say one more time that leaving it alone is the reasonable compromise here. I mean, that's still a 13% tax raise. To go for the extra 3 is we're not doing our job. And the other aspect of this is it's our duty to make sure that we're not raising the taxes too much. It's almost like, saying, well, department heads and the city administrator setting our budget. That's like their kids set your budget. Yeah, they're gonna take everything they can and do the best they want. I mean, that's the truth of it. It's the truth though.
The commissioners are involved in it as well. We are step by step.
It's our duty to set the budget and make sure that we're not giving everything that people want.
I recommended this budget based on feedback from commissioners and based on feedback from the department heads and based on my professional experience as a city manager.
What about feedback from the citizens?
He's right.
The citizens elect you all. And there was a public hearing and there is a process for citizens to get involved in the budget process that they said.
I'm the only one up here that thinks almost a 17% tax rate is too much. That's pretty sad.
It's also our job to make sure our city keeps running and providing services that we need, so.
A little bit every year goes a long ways.
If the commission would like me to present a budget with the current mill levy, that is easy enough to do.
I am comfortable with what was presented. I mean, I suppose we vote on this and then. I mean, that is my opinion. Like I said, we have a motion on the floor. So, Don? Favor? Aye.
Then
Motion passed 3-1. It's not a fun process and we're never gonna make everybody happy. I've learned that. And we're just gonna keep doing the best we can. So let's move on to one more side note. Thank you for the work you put into this, Becky. It's much appreciated. Not fun. Going on number 4, Housing Rehabilitation Advisory Board appointments.
So we had 6 people apply. It's funny, we started advertising this board back in April, I think. And then we made some appointments a month ago maybe, and then we got some interest, which is fantastic. So we had 6 people apply. There were 3 positions on the Housing Rehabilitation Advisory Board. As a reminder, we are putting this board together both because it is a requirement of the CDBG housing application that we intend to apply for. And it is also a major priority of the commission and the community to improve our housing in Hiawatha. And so this board will be an integral part of trying to address those specific priorities. And so we've got 3 applicants. To remind everyone, we were looking for specific people with specific experience to fill these positions. We have filled, we have a realtor that has been appointed, somebody in finance and banking. We were looking with these 3 spots, maybe somebody from a large employer that can kind of discuss, the issues that they're having in hiring people and finding homes, somewhere for people to live. We would like to see someone with some construction experience, maybe a landlord. And then I can't remember what that 3rd one was, but so we have, like I mentioned, 6 people that have applied. Those were all put in front of you for appointments. Be up to you all who we would like to appoint to those remaining 3 positions on the board. Once we have the board full, I plan on getting with Garrett Ertram, who is our housing grant or grant in general guru, and we'll start getting the process started with getting the board together and starting to work on this. Yeah, it's in your package, and those are the 6. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, and I'm having computer issues as well, where I was going to get
Do you want me to join anything?
We have,
Richard.
I think I can put this up now.
I've got it right here.
Okay, great.
So is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. Richard Schilling. I don't know who he is. Bob Freese, Dave Thompson, and Lucinda Schilling or Cindy Schilling, and Velvet Guy, and then also Lucy. I don't know, Grothausen. I hate to mispronounce her name.
That's correct.
Did I get it right?
Yes.
Those are the ones. I don't know if any of you want any details on who they are, or if you already know who they are. Those are the applicants that was in our board pack.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Bob Freese, Dave Thompson, and Richard Chilling to the board.
I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded to add Richard, Bob, and Dave. Is there any further discussion? You sure you want to do that, Richard? Too late, so you know. If not, Dawn?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion passed 4-0. I appreciate all the interest and the applicants who put in. I mean, this is obviously a huge thing that we need to work on. And I think we have a pretty fantastic group. So moving on to airport capital improvement plan. How do you?
So what I'm here to discuss with you today is I dealt with Brian Gordon. We know through which he has implemented our grants that we've been getting for the KIP program from KDOT. For some of the improvements that we've made in electrical wall, made some taxiway improvements. I got with him to see what the next step of that, and that was. And the next step in that is the runway edge lighting from both runways. And I wanted to make sure that I have that enough money in the budget to cover that for 2024. And so what I'm asking is, it is time to submit those grant applications again. September 30th is the deadline. I'm asking for approval to submit the grant application for the runway edge lighting for a total of $500,000. It's a 90-10 grant, so the city's match on that would be $50,000, which is in the 2024 budget to cover that expense. And I also attached, there was a kind of a, it looks like we had an engineering firm take a look at our airport, put together a master plan in 2020. And so I also attached that, this kind of for your information to see where some of these things are coming from and kind of what we're working towards at the airport.
Did we ever find out the second runway? Do we have to have that or not?
Yeah, I haven't found that out yet. It's I know they're both registered with the FAA. As far as I know, I don't know the answer to that question right at this moment. I've been coming through a lot of regulations, just even today, but that was mostly about grass because we need to do some repairs on the runway that we have. The main one that's used, which would be the north-south, but I don't have an answer to that question.
If I recall, the engineering's already done on this line.
Yes,
I remember seeing the drawings.
yes.
Does that include the rotating beacon in this next phase?
It just says edge lighting. I'm not, I don't know if that does include the rotating beacon on this one. Questions? I would entertain a motion to approve the submission of the KAIP grant application to fund the airport runway lighting.
So make that motion.
So you can which one moved and seconded.
I'll say it.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 16, or no, sorry, that's wrong. I just slid that one through.
You were teasing.
For submission of the KIP, any further discussion? Not coming.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you.
Brad. Moving on to 6, resolution number 16, unsafe and dangerous structures. We do have a packet that was put in front of us as well, so thank you.
And I apologize that I cannot get this thing to work with my computer, or I would put up pictures of the various photos that were included in the packet. So I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to do that.
Can I just ask that we table this 2 weeks until I go through this list? I was just given this list this morning, and I'd like to physically go look at these properties myself before I make any decisions on this. So just ask for 2 weeks and then we'll go from there.
I mean, like I said, this isn't saying that we're gonna go in there and tear things down tomorrow. This is just to start the process of, hey, you've got some concerns on your property. But I suppose what's another 2 weeks?
That's all I'm asking. I'd like to just do a little research on this.
So do we need a motion to table?
I mean,
No, it won't be a
No.
table, it'll be a different order, it'll be a different resolution. We'll have to change
Right,
the dates.
because, yeah, we'll have to do a new resolution.
The hearing is time sensitive on when the first resolution is passed and when it's published, so we'll just bring back a new resolution. The bulk of it will be the same. The dates will be different.
One reason why I'm saying this is because someone on this list is actually a friend of mine, and they had no idea that they even have any problems with their house. So we need to do some more work on letting people know that we're possibly adding them to the list.
Well, that's what, I understand, that's the way it's done, is this just lets people know that, yes, there are some significant issues. You can come and talk to us, let us know what the plan is. And, I mean, historically, we've shown as long as people show interest and walk up here and talk to either the commission or go and talk to our code enforcement, if we have a plan, it's not a problem. So that's why I'm not that concerned about doing this resolution. I will respect the fact that you feel like there needs to be 2 weeks, but this is just helping people know that
I
this
haven't
is.
seen any of those pictures yet, but
It's in
They were in
the
the packet.
I didn't load or something. I don't have them. I didn't get the packet, is what I'm saying. I'm able to look at those pictures.
this for this. Okay, moving on to communications.
I don't know where mine went. I brought it up here and I couldn't find it. So first item on here, the ambulance service subsidy agreement. I apologize. The actual agreement was not in the packet. And we don't know what happened. We had some issues with our PDF. So, but you did have the note from Andy from in April of 2022, there was an agreement that what the commission approved. That agreement was to provide $34,578 per year to Town and Country to provide ambulance services. That is in 12 monthly installments of $2,881.50. This kind of came up because it seemed like no one really understood why we were paying for any of the ambulance service. It's not typical for a city to provide provide payments for ambulance unless the city themselves is is providing that countywide service and getting property tax levy money from the county to fund that, because it is the county's statutory obligation to fund ambulance services. So I thought that was kind of strange when I started here. I was like, why are we paying for ambulance service? And then, as we're going through the budget process, commissioners were like, I don't know why we're doing this. So it just seemed like maybe something that we had just always done. Other cities in Brown County do not fund ambulance service at all. It's just the city of Hiawatha that contributes to the ambulance service. It feels like unfair to Hiawatha citizens that their property taxes are going to pay for ambulance service twice, because the county obviously levies property taxes for ambulance service, and then the city of Hiawatha levies taxes for ambulance service. And then when they go and they call for ambulance service, they're probably going to pay something out of pocket or insurance or whatever. So it's kind of just a strange, it's not cheap. It's a strange arrangement that we have here. So that was kind of what the discussion, how it became up. And so just wanted you all to see that we do have an agreement that was approved by commission last year to provide $34,578 per year. It does have a termination clause where we would have to provide 120 days notice prior to terminating, and so if that is something that the commission is interested in or would like to look at, sending that termination notice, I could bring something back for the next commission meeting.
So I guess the question is what are we getting more than what we should? I mean, I obviously I voted to say we would do this because it was presented in the way that we should. But I mean, so just last year.
Yeah, and I don't know the nature of that. I don't know if it was consent agenda, Andy.
We've been providing subsidy to the town country ambulance for longer than I've been around. So I don't know if it was a function early on where the county, who does have that responsibility, wasn't adequately funding the ambulance, and so the city chipped in. So in 2014, that was renewed, but nobody ever signed it except for the city. We signed our part of the agreement. It's kind of we had part of it, the county had part of it. So, and it could have related back to an earlier funding agreement between the city and the county that predates everybody. So, with recent developments in the county budget, though, I think they did adequately fund Town and Country where they had. I think they increased their budget quite a bit. So that's why this topic is up here today.
I did do some research on this. Apparently they're still very under budget compared to even like Highland. Highland, I think, just passed it's like $1.1 million tax or something for their ambulance.
And the Dauphin County does have the emergency services districts, you know, our cemeteries went to a district, so they have their own tax entities over there for emergency services.
And the biggest thing is they are staffed 24/7 over there, and our ambulance is not. And so they would like to get to a point where they can be staffed all the time. They do get multiple calls, and that's when it's a problem. So I guess with that said,
What do we do if they're not staffed and there's a call?
that's a problem.
Like nobody shows up?
He's got to scrounge and get people.
They'll dispatch homes to sit down with our firefighters.
And isn't that why the county ups their,
Yes.
so
I think they're
so
trying
he
to-
can get somebody
Yeah.
full time?
Well, he's not quite there is what he's.
Right.
Is what he's saying.
It's hard
It's
to
not quite enough to
kind of understand what the county was doing with their budget, but, you know, they did increase it quite a bit, hopefully. Like I said, this is something we've always chipped in on. We're not required to by statute. I don't know the original reason why we started.
Does South Brown chip in?
We're the only ones.
We had an agreement in the county.
Hmm.
There was kind of all three entities were part of the same. But I'm not aware that Horton or any other city is part of that. Now, I don't know whether Town and Country has individual agreements with those cities.
I'm kind of on the fence on it. I kind of want them to show up if they're. So it is.
We can always bring something for a vote without anybody having to make a commitment to it today. We'll find out. We can always have maybe Town and Country correspond with us as far as what they're looking for. So.
I mean, it's a full mill it's over a mill for us to provide the ambulance, you know, what we
Yeah,
provide.
this would be less than a quarter of a mil for the county.
Right.
It's a full mil for the city.
Yeah.
Some options. Possibly. If we do something like that, it would be nice to have it drop off.
Right.
The mill. And give it back to the taxpayer. Instead of it just being absorbed.
Right. Even if we do it now, it could be, the commission could, I guess, instead of using that spending, maybe, I mean, I know we have a lot of things that help us through that process, but as far as build some kind of reserve, so maybe that would help. But, so this kind of, why it started, I don't know, I wish I could tell you, but anyway, that's not a decision I don't know if we need to make today. We can certainly talk about this.
Back in the day, I worked out their own ambulance service, if I recall, and
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the expenses here in town were anywhere near what they are now, and maybe give us some more budget, we can help them out, and the county pays the rest of it. But now, Town and Country serves the whole county, including the reservation, I believe. And that's a lot bigger scope of service for them.
From what I understand, they just started doing that when they start to get them going. Because it was difficult to get the program started, and so we've just always done it. And that was like in the 70s.
I think the hospital's been for a while, I think for a lot of years.
Well, it's definitely worth looking at when this is supposed to be something the county does, so. There's nothing else we need to do on that for now, though, right? Correct. So.
What's really called here? Economic development funding. The county had their public hearing for their budget, and they had some folks show up and ask for a lower mill levy than what had been proposed. And so the county completely eliminated economic development funding. They give HEFID annually $25,000 for economic development. This year, the city is actually matching that 25,000, and now the county has decided not to fund economic development at all. I'm very concerned about this. I think that there's a lot of HEFID and the executive director, Michaela, and I have been working together on a lot of things economic development related. I think that, HEFID has found it's been in the past, there hasn't been, not that the city hasn't been a willing partner, absolutely the city has, but there hasn't been staff of the city that has taken a particular interest in moving forward economic development efforts. And that is very much something that I think the city needs to be involved in, and I've been trying to work pretty closely with HEFID in order to move some things forward, particularly in the housing realm. And so I'm very concerned about the county cutting that funding. I do sit on the HEFID board. I know that Michaela has sent stuff out to board members. She has asked for letters of support, to continue funding economic development. I know that it's a priority for commission, as we, recently just voted to increase funding to have it for economic development. So I guess I just wanted to bring this to the commission's attention and see, Michaela has requested some kind of letter of support or that kind of thing. I don't know if the commission would be interested in providing something like that, but the county's hearing is next Monday. And so in the cuts that they made as a response or result of their budget hearing, they cut some funds for direct electrician expenses. They cut $250,000 from road and bridge, which none of that money is spent inside city limits, just to note. And then they cut the $50,000 that is used for economic development countywide.
Good for them.
Is that sarcasm? Just want to be sure. I didn't know if that came through or not. I would be in favor of writing a letter of support, whether it does any good or not, but I think that we should. I mean, we need to do what we can to attract people to come. Seems like that's a small, like, so was it $0.25 for them? Ish,
Yeah,
even less than that.
less than that, an eighth of a mil, right? Eighth of a mil, yeah, because they're 200,000 mil. Yeah.
So
I guess the HEFID portion.
I would be in favor of somebody crafting a letter. I'd be happy to sign.
I would be happy to put together a letter.
Well, there we go.
Okay. Website update. Kind of disappointed to find out that there has not been as much progress as we would have hoped on our website. Obviously I came into this when we had already signed a contract with the current website provider that we're working with. It turns out that we were kind of under the impression that they would be guiding us through the process of like what we're putting on the website and developing content, that sort of thing. And they essentially just took what was on our old website and moved it over, and it took like 4 months to do. So we had a meeting though last week with department heads, and we have a plan of action for how we're going to get this content that we need on the website. So we were working through that. Again, apologize for the delay. We were really hoping to have something sooner, but we will, come hell or high water, have a new website by then.
I don't know much about website work, but whenever we get this thing from, is that something that the city can update?
Yes. So that part of the contract is they will provide training for us on how to update it. There are certain things that we can't update. One of the things is we didn't like the color that they proposed for our front page, and then when we were on the call, the person that's handling our account was like, well, you know, that would be an upcharge because it's a change in design. What? So things like that, but it's a large company, and so, you know, you have to deal with some of that stuff, but we will get it figured out, and we're not paying more money to change it.
I've had lots of people ask for contacts, and I do not see anywhere on the website that there is any contact information.
And part of that issue is like, nobody knows how to, this website is
It's
like, from
terrible.
like 1980, I don't know, it's not obviously that, but it's
The new one
really
should
old.
have all that, right?
Yes, it will have all of our contact information, and yeah, so that's what we're working on now, is like developing all that contact and content, and that will be on there, and I think maybe Mickey knows how to do some things. Sorry. I know, poor Becky, I just keep volunteering for stuff. Is he even there?
Fell asleep.
So
We're no longer safe right now.
yeah, so I think that he can help us get some of that stuff that, you know, on there, but yeah, I mean, it's just, we've got to. That's nice, so.
It's, I've had to call up here to ask, how do I find such and such? I don't know.
Yeah, it's bad, it's bad.
Just another comment. I always had a problem going on our website, looking at the city code, and it's terribly out of date, and you codification.
Yeah,
I think that's very important to get that caught up. So
right,
people can go to that new website and see what the rules are.
yeah, because you don't know what ordinances to look for, or, you know, yeah, it needs to be in one place, so, yeah. Next item, public works update from Brad Scott.
Don't frown, Grants.
Is this for the traffic signals?
Everything.
Everything, okay, so public works update from me. Okay, so one of course, we got good news with the telemetry system out of the sewer plant, because it is still causing operational issues as far as Dominic, I was just talking to him this morning about some of the issues that he's facing. They're having to manually waste, which means that they have to get rid of some of the bacteria that grows there, but I won't worry with those details, but this is it's causing them issues. It's good news that we should see them this week. That should get fixed, and we should be back operating as normal once again. We have seen some very, very good improvement on our evaporation out of the lagoons. We lost 4 inches in the lagoon last week alone. But this dry weather has really helped. Just in low humidities, things like that has really, I've seen it accelerate quite a bit. So that's been positive. As far as the traffic signal update goes, we are working with the school at this time on the school had asked for some leeway from us to pursue an avenue that they wanted to pursue, and which was granted. And in this process, KDOT is wanting to have us take those signals down, or work with us to take those signals down. And the last email that I sent was that we want to give the process that's ongoing with the school district time to resolve. And then we can discuss what we need to do further after that. I made it clear that I can't authorize any signals to be taken down that's against the will of the commission. And so they're aware of that. We have asked that if they want to force those signals to come down, that they give us a letter in writing that states that fact that they're doing this against the will of the commission and the public, as far as what needs to happen with those traffic signals at First Morgan. We're really trying to focus on the safety aspect of that corridor at this time, which is the same thing that the school is trying to do. And so we're just giving them some time to pursue whatever avenues that they want to pursue.
Who is the
School district.
sorry?
And well, once we have final resolution on that, I will update you at that time. But that's all I know right now. There's really no change as to what I know or what's been going on at First Oregon. But we are still working on it, and we're also well aware that something needs to be done soon.
Well, the last I heard, and Becky, I believe you told me that they were coming down a week ago last Wednesday.
That is, one of the emails that I got from KDOT was they wanted us to schedule it for a week ago last Wednesday, which we declined at that point.
I think my frustration with the situation is KDOT is saying these lights are not warranted, therefore we want them down. Another thing that's not warranted is 4 lanes of traffic on that highway, because it used to have more volume and now we have less. And we don't get to control the speed limit on that highway, KDOT does. And so they're saying we're taking out these signals and you're gonna have no control over north-south traffic, but you're still gonna have 4 lanes of traffic, and you're still gonna have a 30 or 40 mile per hour speed limit with a school zone, granted. But the thing about wide streets is that people travel at the pace that feels safe, yes, a speed limit may slow people down, but sans there being a cop there watching, people travel at a speed that they feel safe. And when you have wider lanes and you have a wide road, people drive faster. And so those signals are the only thing that can potentially stop people and slow them down. And yes, the stoplights aren't warranted, but also the lanes aren't. So don't take away the only thing that we have to stop people, to control north-south traffic, and not give us a solution to, at the same time, reduce the speed limit or reduce the size of the road, and give us some pedestrian, control devices so that people can get across the road safely.
Did we ever look into possibly unlocking the road by Bruna?
We did. That's the accessory road that goes down towards Bruna from First Street, right? Not the Bruna itself. That's actually still owned by Bruna as well.
We don't have a right of way or anything.
We don't have a right of way that goes down that road. It used to be the weigh station. The city did have that at one time. We deeded that over to Bruna. Because we didn't have use for that weigh station, I think was the idea at that time. And so if we could come to an agreement with Bruna on that, then we could do something like that, which they may be more open to, since we wouldn't be driving necessarily through the parking lot. It would be worth approaching them though, yes.
And then maybe even coming up towards Subway would be an
Yes.
option if we could just get that unlocked
Mhm.
and turn people up that way. It would help tremendously.
Yeah.
I went there this morning. I got I parked in, what's his name, Don Leach's.
Yes.
I got there at 7:15 and I left after 8 o'clock, which at the time I left, there was not a police officer there on the other side, but that's beside the point. It was utter chaos. It was utter chaos. At one point, there were 4 cars in the middle of the intersection and a child, I say a child, almost in the middle of this, that was walking across the street. I mean, there were cars going every which direction. Now, that was the only bad thing I really saw. And that was pretty frightening, because I truly thought this kid was gonna get hit by one of the 4 cars. But what I did see was speeding. But you know what? It wasn't by the kids. It was by people that I think were supposed to be to work at 7 o'clock and it was 5:10. The only time they slowed down was when Jim Root got out in the street. And they had to slow down because he had his big sign out there and was waving at everybody. God love him. But I guess, okay, that was beside the point. I wanted to tell you that I was there. I wanted to see for a fact what was going on. At 8:05, I'd had enough. I needed my coffee and a cigarette. Okay, so now, so it's my understanding from what you just said that the city has pretty much backed off because, let me finish. So that because the school wants to take over, not take over, but they have a plan of action. Is that what you said?
They have contacts through the state that the city does not have.
So,
It's-
so are you getting informed about what's
We
going
are,
on?
we are getting informed about what's going on. The city has, once again, the city has given all the information, presented the case to that.
I feel like I'm putting you on the spot. Should I be talking
No.
to somebody else?
No, I don't think so. The city is involved with the process as well. However, the contacts that have been talked to are not the contacts that I have personally. This is something that the school wanted to do. These are contacts through the Department of Education.
So are they getting any place? Let me ask you that.
As of
Getting
right
any
now, not
place
that I'm
with
aware of.
the-
No,
with the-
not that I'm aware of. I have not received any communication from anybody at this point that we're getting anywhere.
Well, so maybe the city needs to get in touch with the school district again.
We have been in contact with the school district numerous times. Trying to get an answer as to, what's going on, and we have not received any.
Well, you know what, Becky, Mayor, I'm getting really fed up with this. As a commissioner and as a citizen, I am getting really fed up with this.
The problem we have is KDOT has the power, and we're able
I
to
know
keep,
they do.
I know, and so far we've been able to keep KDOT, put off for a while, but there's no hurry in government, Tony. I mean, I don't know what else we can do. I mean, we're emailing, we're talking. I mean, when I say we, I don't mean me, it's not me. I know the schools do what they can, and that's the way I see it, that's the last avenue we have. I mean, KDOT has been blatantly clear from bottom to top that no, it's not warranted. So I don't know what other avenue there is besides what the school is doing.
What are they doing? Do you know, Dave, what they're doing? Do you, Brian, know?
Last time I knew, they were trying to get a letter or get a face-to-face with the governor.
Right, and that's where it's at.
It's on the
And how did
secretary's
you know
desk or
this?
something.
Because I feel like this is all a big secret. That, because I don't know anything.
There's been nothing reported since the last time it was brought up.
The last I heard was that they were going down a week ago, the polls.
So I-
This is a discussion far beyond what we need to be talking about right now. It's 8 o'clock. But
I'm starting.
I am too, and I'm Bruce. I'm just really upset about this school light situation because half of you know something and half of you don't. And this reminds me of Bill Collins' days.
If I had something to tell you, Tony, I would. There's nothing else. And is it frustrating? Absolutely. Can I make the governor's office move quicker?
No, you
No.
cannot.
And neither can Lonnie Moser. I mean, you can do a lot, but I don't think even he can do that. So what I'm happy about is at least we still have the flashing lights. Is it ideal? No, but we still have those. So that means there's still a chance we can do something about it. But if the governor says, no, never mind, and KDOT says, bring it down, I don't know what else we do except for we'll change it to we'll change it. You take one pole, I'll take the other.
Honey,
I know you would do that.
no.
I know you would. So
No, I already have my handcuffs.
Anyway, on to the
Swear
fire
to God, I'm
department.
telling you the truth.
Think the fire department's next?
Yes, you guys have the fire department run report, in your packets. Patrick, you got anything you wanna share? You're just gonna slide it in here.
We did a demonstration for the middle school science. They were talking about back burning with the fires that happened in Maui. So they wanted to see how a back burn how we would do it. So we stretched a square bale of hay out on the practice field of the football field, or in between the football field and the main field, and showed them how to do, or how we would demonstrate a back burn, and, you know, things that, how they were talking about what happened in Lehigh and Maui and stuff. So we just lit it on fire, and we didn't even have to put any water on it. That's how good we are.
That's great. Thank you for doing that.
Just a couple of informational items. The Chamber's September newsletter is in your packet. A letter from Maple Heights. They are changing ownership. And just wanted to let the commission know about that. And then Rainbow has an update to their internet service provider stuff. They're updating their print and distribution schedules. That's all I have.
Governing body comments. Thank you, everybody, for sticking it out. This is the longest meeting we've had in a while. It's been a lot of work. So that's all I got. Brian? Dave?
I'd like to congratulate Red Hawk Nutrition for their new business on the 5 block of Oregon Street. I went to their ribbon cutting. They have a nice little shop there. And then shout out, got a new business in town.
Thank you for going to it. Evans is not here, so Tony?
No, thank you. I think I've said enough.
Oh, I did forget to add that this Thursday is our home cross country meet. If anybody wants to come out to the golf course, it starts at 4:30. It's a certain fire chief's son, 4, sorry. That's middle school. You know. See a certain fire chief's son run. Anyway, always appreciate the support. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, you also have the football in Hiawatha for middle school as well Thursday night.
And volleyball too.
And volleyball.
It's a busy
It's going to be a busy day.
Choose your sport.
I know we adjourned.
So move to second. Dawn, help us.
All there.
Bye.
It's 8 o'clock. I mean, what's another 20 minutes? I'm sorry, it's 10 after 8. What's another 20 minutes?
Your boy, he rode my truck over to the golf course today.
Yeah.
Got 2 dogs